In this episode, we're going to shift from infrastructure-first thinking into malware-first thinking, while keeping the same discipline you've already built around evidence, hypotheses, and calibrated confidence. Malware is often treated as a scary black box, especially by beginners, because it sounds like a mysterious piece of code that only reverse engineers can understand. The reality is that you can learn a great deal from malware behavior without needing to take apart code line by line, as long as you focus on what the malware does and what those actions imply about the operator's goals. Behavior is where intent becomes visible, because malware is designed to accomplish objectives, and objectives leave traces in the sequence of actions a program takes. Reading behavior well means you treat actions as evidence, avoid jumping to attribution, and connect patterns to a plausible goal model that can be tested. By the end, you should feel confident in the idea that malware behavior can be interpreted in a structured way, and that those interpretations can produce intelligence value even for brand new learners. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A strong place to start is by defining malware behavior in a way that is useful for analysis, because beginners often think behavior means anything the program does, which becomes overwhelming. Malware behavior is the set of observable actions the program performs in an environment, such as how it starts, what it touches, what it tries to reach, and how it maintains itself over time. Some behaviors are immediate and noisy, like scanning for files or making repeated outbound connections, while others are subtle, like waiting for a trigger or using built-in system tools to blend in. The important point is that behavior is not a single action. It is a pattern of actions that unfolds over time. When you read behavior, you are looking for purpose, which means asking what each action accomplishes in the attacker's workflow and what sequence those actions suggest. This is why timelines matter in malware behavior analysis, because sequence often reveals more than individual events. A disciplined mindset treats each behavior as an observation and then asks what it supports, what it could also mean, and what other evidence would confirm or weaken the interpretation. To surface adversary goals, it helps to think in terms of what problems malware is trying to solve for the attacker. Attackers want access, control, information, and impact, and malware is often a tool that helps them achieve one or more of those. Many malware families can do multiple things, but in a specific incident, the observed behavior often reveals which capabilities are being used and which are dormant. For example, a program that quickly establishes persistence and then stays quiet might be prioritizing long-term access, while a program that begins enumerating files and encrypting data might be prioritizing immediate disruption and extortion. A program that focuses on credential access behaviors might be supporting lateral movement and privilege escalation rather than direct data theft. Beginners sometimes treat malware as a category, like ransomware or Trojan, and assume the goal is obvious, but goal inference must come from observed behavior in context. A disciplined analyst asks what the behavior would look like if the goal were access, theft, espionage, or disruption, and then compares those expectations to what was actually observed. One of the most useful ways to read malware behavior is to break it into stages of activity, not as a rigid framework, but as a practical way to understand progression. Early behaviors often involve establishing execution and survival, such as how the program starts, whether it repeats, and whether it tries to hide its presence. Mid-stage behaviors often involve discovering the environment, such as learning what systems exist, what privileges are available, and what valuable resources can be reached. Later behaviors often involve accomplishing the objective, such as exfiltrating data, encrypting files, delivering additional payloads, or maintaining command and control. The stage idea is valuable because it helps you interpret why certain behaviors happen early or late and what the operator might be trying to achieve next. Beginners often see a single artifact, like a suspicious outbound connection, and treat it as the whole story, but behavior often reveals a sequence. When you think in stages, you naturally generate testable hypotheses about what you would expect to see next, which helps you guide collection and reduce uncertainty. Persistence behaviors are often among the most revealing early signals because they suggest how long the attacker expects to stay and what level of access they believe they can maintain. A program that invests effort in persistence is usually designed for ongoing access, and that can imply goals like surveillance, staged theft, or preparation for later action. On the other hand, malware that does not establish persistence might be designed for quick impact or for one-time execution, depending on context. Beginners sometimes assume that all malware tries to persist, but some campaigns prioritize speed and may accept a short operational window. The key is to interpret persistence behavior as evidence of operational intent, not as a moral judgment. A disciplined analyst asks what kind of goal benefits from persistence in this environment and whether the observed behavior actually succeeded in maintaining presence. If persistence attempts are clumsy or repeated, that might also reveal constraints or automation rather than a careful human operator. These details help you build a richer and more accurate picture of adversary goals. Communication behavior is another major window into goals because outbound connections often indicate coordination, updates, or data movement. When malware reaches out to external infrastructure, it might be trying to receive instructions, send results, download additional components, or confirm that it is running. The pattern of communication can hint at whether the malware is interactive, meaning a human is likely controlling it, or automated, meaning it runs through predefined steps. Beginners sometimes assume that any outbound connection means data theft, but communication can be used for many purposes, including simple beaconing, capability updates, or environment checks. A disciplined approach asks what the malware is likely to need from the outside to accomplish its objective and whether the communication behavior matches that need. For example, repeated low-volume connections might fit a goal of maintaining control, while large transfers might fit a goal of exfiltration, though you must avoid assuming without supporting evidence. Communication is also where infrastructure pivoting becomes relevant again, because external endpoints can connect the behavior to broader clusters, but you should validate pivots carefully rather than chasing every possible link. Discovery and enumeration behavior often reveals what the malware is hunting for, which can be one of the clearest hints about the attacker's priorities. If a program spends time listing files, checking specific directories, or inspecting running processes, it might be searching for valuable data, security tools, or operational constraints. If it queries user accounts, group memberships, or privilege-related information, it might be preparing for escalation and lateral movement. If it probes network resources, shared drives, or remote services, it might be looking for paths to spread. Beginners sometimes interpret discovery as generic noise, but discovery choices are often purposeful because malware developers choose what to look for based on what they expect to find in target environments. That does not mean every discovery action proves intent, but it does mean discovery can be compared to competing goal hypotheses. A disciplined analyst asks whether the discovery pattern fits a theft goal, a disruption goal, or an access maintenance goal, and then looks for supporting evidence in later behaviors. Discovery is often the bridge between initial access and objective execution, so reading it carefully helps you anticipate what might come next. Payload delivery and secondary component behavior can also be very revealing because it shows whether the malware is a standalone tool or part of a modular operation. A program that downloads and executes additional components suggests flexibility and a likely need to adapt actions based on the environment. That can imply a goal that requires tailoring, such as targeted theft or long-term access, rather than a single fixed outcome. On the other hand, a program that carries everything it needs and executes quickly might be designed for straightforward impact, like encryption, or for quick credential collection. Beginners sometimes assume that multi-stage operations are always more advanced, but complexity can arise from many factors, including reuse of toolkits or automation choices. The disciplined move is to interpret modularity as evidence of operational approach, not as a badge of sophistication. You ask what goal benefits from modularity and what the observed module sequence suggests about the attacker's next step. This is another place where hypothesis testing becomes practical because you can predict what additional modules you might expect if the goal is theft versus disruption. When you read behavior to infer goals, you also need to be careful about common analytic pitfalls, especially narrative bias and overconfidence. It is tempting to tell a neat story, such as the attacker did this, then that, and therefore their goal was a specific outcome. But malware behavior can be incomplete and can be influenced by failures, environmental constraints, or defensive interference. A disciplined analyst treats goal inference as a hypothesis, not as a final truth, and uses confidence language that matches evidence strength. For example, you might have high confidence that the malware established persistence and attempted external communication, but only medium confidence about whether it successfully received commands or moved data. You might suspect a theft goal based on discovery patterns, but remain uncertain until you see evidence of staging or transfer. This careful approach keeps you from overstating and helps stakeholders understand what is known versus what is suspected. It also guides future collection, because your uncertainty points directly to what evidence would resolve the goal question. Another important part of reading malware behavior is distinguishing operator goals from malware capability, because capability does not equal intent. Many malware families include features that are not used in a specific case, either because the operator did not need them or because the environment prevented them. Beginners sometimes read about a malware family and assume every capability is present in every incident, which inflates fear and leads to unrealistic conclusions. Behavior analysis keeps you grounded because it focuses on what was actually done, not on what could have been done in theory. This is also where the concept of constraints matters, because constraints shape goals and actions. If the malware repeatedly fails to reach certain resources, that might indicate limited privileges or segmented networks, which can affect what the attacker can realistically achieve. Observing constraints can be as informative as observing successes because constraints often explain why certain goals were not pursued. A disciplined analyst builds goal hypotheses that respect the observed constraints rather than assuming the attacker could do anything. To close, reading malware behavior to surface adversary goals means you treat actions as evidence, organize those actions into meaningful patterns and stages, and infer purpose with calibrated confidence. You look at persistence, communication, discovery, and modular delivery behaviors as clues about whether the operator is seeking long-term access, data theft, disruption, or something else, and you test those inferences against what was observed. You avoid confusing capability with intent, and you remain honest about uncertainty when evidence is incomplete or ambiguous. You also connect behavior back to pivoting and link analysis when it is useful, but you validate links and avoid ghost chasing, because malware-related pivots can multiply quickly. With this behavioral foundation in place, the next step is to extract static malware features that travel well, meaning features that remain useful even when behavior changes. So you can connect samples, cluster campaigns, and build durable intelligence without relying only on what you happen to observe in one environment.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.